In this episode of The View, I'm sitting with Scott Rechler, the chairman and CEO of RXR Realty, a firm that owns millions of square feet of commercial office space in the city. Scott, you've obviously been very busy in recent years, a lot of projects on your plate. What are your plans for 2014? What do you see in the market?
If you look at this last year, there were 60 deals that were signed at over $100 a square foot in Midtown, which was twice as much as last year and the most since the peak in 07, 08. And so in those buildings that have that level of demand, and I think you're seeing it more in Midtown South, and I think you'll start seeing again in some of the key buildings in Midtown, you're going to have pricing power. When tenants want space, they're willing to pay for that type of space. We've had issues obviously being held back by the financial service firms that I'm a believer that in 2014, we're going to see that shift where the financial service firms and their support staff, so the law firms, the accounting firms, is going to be more accretive to the market than dilutive to the marketplace.
Right. Haven't we seen the banks kind of do the opposite, where they're basically being more efficient with their square footage, they're packing more people into less space, and in fact probably laying off some people along the way? I mean, I think we saw Credit Suisse is renewing its lease down at 11 Madison. It's taken quite a lot less space than it had previously had. And I think that's sort of been the headline trend. Does that give you any cause for concern, or at least a little sense of pessimism that the banks are going to be much more efficient? They're going to be very careful with how they take space, and they're not really in growth mode right now.
I still think the big money center banks are going to be more cautious.
Right.
But I think the entire financial industry sector, the banks, the non-banks, the regional banks, the support services to the banks are going to be accretive, not dilutive. Now, you're raising a different point, though, which is not just banks, is densification. And clearly, densification is a factor that will have an impact on this marketplace, because you're putting more people in less space. Okay? Now, there's a couple of other things, though, with that are interesting. The metric has changed, right? It used to be the tenant was also focused on what's my cost per square foot to occupy space. With densification, it's really what's my cost per employee. And so tenants can pay a higher price per square foot. Right, they could pay $70 or $80 a square foot because it's still netting them a lower price per employee. And that's why the economics for these new buildings work for the landlord.
So it's a good flip side. Densification has a good flip side for landlords like yourself, where they're able to pay more.
And keeps the rents going. That's why you look at the rents in the market, generally moderately across. You saw a big pop in Midtown South in the rents, but I think they've been stable even with all this going on.